everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's meetup. On today's agenda, Courtney will be providing us an overview of ArcGIS Open Data. And as a reminder, we'll be recording and posting this meetup on meetups.com shortly after the presentation. During the meetup, if you'd like to make comments or chat with other participants, then use the chat pod. However, if you'd like to submit a question for Courtney to answer, then please submit them through the Q&A pod. With that said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Courtney.
Thanks, Heather. Can you see my screen all right in presentation mode?
Yep.
Awesome. So hello, everybody. My name is Courtney Claussens, and I am a product engineer on the ArcGIS Open Data team. And we're based out of the Research and Development Center in Washington, D.C. And today I'm going to give you an overview of ArcGIS Open Data. We'll go through the user interface, so how people are using it. We'll go through some best practices for uploading your data, for making sure that it's high quality and things like that. And then we'll look at how to configure your own site. So for those that are uninitiated, open data is data that is technically open. So it's data that is available in machine-readable format. And it's data that is legally open. So we have the licenses and the permissions to use it, reuse it, mash it up, redistribute it, make new things like that. And it's data that is free. So why do we want to release open data? Some things that are highly touted about it, especially from top-down levels of government, is that open data leads to transparency and accountability in government. And these are driving factors of things like the Digital Accountability and Transparency Act, where governments are being told that they have to release their financial expenditure data and things like that. But from that top level, we're seeing initiatives trickle down to lower levels, to state levels of government, to local levels of government. And governments are releasing more kinds of data, so beyond budget data and spending data for transparency, but releasing things like their road data and their parcel data and their bus stop data. And these types of data releases are really spurring more participation and innovation and creating economic development. And when we put out these other types of data at lower levels, we can get more people to have their hands on the data. And we're bringing in more people that have different skill sets and different levels of creativity and different interests and things like that. And that really makes the data greater than the sum of its parts, when we can take it and turn it into information and things like that. So thinking of the user experience and when we're going to go get the data, a lot of the time it can be really hard. Personally, I have a background in geography and GIS, and I remember searching for data for my GIS projects, and it was just a huge pain. You have to go through all these different government sites and click through and try and find the data that you're looking for, download it, open it, and then it's sometimes not even what you needed in the first place. So if we can make this easier, that would be very, very helpful and reduce the barriers and make your data more useful to more people. So we're going from things like these catalogs on the internet, and this is census, which is pretty hard to navigate. We're not really exactly sure what is inside of here. We're not sure what we're looking at, and we have to download it to then understand it. Or things like a simple FTP site. And this is great. This is a lot of really good data in different formats, but this also takes a lot of effort on the administrator's part to take these individual data sets, convert them to these different files, and then upload them. And then to keep them up to date whenever these data sets get updated, we have to do that over and over again. And there's no API wrapped around this, so for developers, it's not the most useful thing. And what we really want are these building blocks. We want to get beyond that brick wall, the static FTP site, and be able to pull out pieces of data and pull out pieces of other data and mash them up and build new things and create new structures, whether that is an insider analysis or whether it's an app to help people in your community or anything like that. We really just want to give people the pieces that they need to do the things that they want to do and make it really easy for them to do it. So once we pull out these, or once we push out these building blocks, there are a few things that we're seeing that are really, really cool initiatives that are coming from them. So openaddresses.io has a team that is pulling all of the address data that has been released on ArcGIS Open Data and pulling that in with all of the other open address data that they can find in the entire world and making a huge open global database of addresses. So once you push out your data onto open data, there's already people that are looking for this data and want to use it for different applications. We've also seen Waze, a popular traffic navigation app, pull in road closure data from ArcGIS Open Data customers. And this helps people navigate, get around their city faster. So a really good example of people or companies that will put this data to work and put it back into the hands of your citizens as soon as you put it out there. Another thing, a cool thing that we've seen happen, a journalist took a bunch of DC's open data sets and just did a really simple article screenshotting maps and then made a little quiz out of it. So spurring this kind of engagement in a fun, gamey way, this article has a bunch of comments where people are saying, I got 7 out of 10 and I've lived here my whole life. So offers like a new insight onto the city and just a fun way that open data is being used. Okay, so let's get into looking at this product. ArcGIS Open Data is about 1.5 years old now, and it offers a way for people with ArcGIS Online subscriptions to release their data out into the public, to give a data-centric view into their organization. So this is a map of all of the open data sites that have been spun up on the platform all around the world. And it's part of the ArcGIS platform, so it's included with your subscription. If you are only using desktop, you're entitled to an online subscription, so you have that there as well. And it doesn't consume any credits for downloads or for hosting the site or for anything like that. The data is being pulled from either your server or from ArcGIS Online. Or if you have data on an external API, we can connect through that as well and pull that in through ArcGIS Online. So we're leaving our data where it is, which means that whenever it gets updated, it's going to be reflected through that onto your open data site. This is what we call our umbrella site, and this is public facing. You don't need a login. Anyone can go in and access it. And this is a curation of all of the open data sets that are released through ArcGIS Open Data. So we're seeing over 30,000 open data sets from almost 2,500 organizations worldwide, and this is all levels of government, different nonprofits. We don't have any private companies yet, but we've been in discussions with some. So it's like a one-stop shop for people to come and find open data. And once you get into it, what does it look like? This is a screenshot of a data set from Washington, D.C. And it just really gives you, your users, a data-centric view into your organization, like I said. So we can see the data on the map. We can move into the table, and I'll do a demo of this in a moment. But this data set can be accessed in multiple open formats. So your users can download your data directly from your services as a CSV, for a spreadsheet, KML, which is keyhole markup language. It's what's used in Google Earth and Google Maps, as a shapefile, or through APIs as GeoJSON or GeoServices. It's fully hosted and configurable, so you can just spin up a site using our web editor, and you don't have to host your own site or anything like that. And configurable, so you can fully brand it towards your organization if you have to meet any branding needs or anything like that. And again, it's included with your ArcGIS subscription. So on our team, when we think of open data, we think of it with these 4 principles in mind. So we want open data to be accessible, discoverable, explorable, and collaborative. When we talk about accessibility, it's really, really basic. Just the data has to be on the internet, and you have to be able to get to it. So FTP sites, the open data on there is accessible. A little bit more interesting is discoverability. So how do people actually find the data that you've put on the internet? Open data is discoverable through searching. We can search through keywords, themes, or we can search by location. And once we land on a data set, you'll see suggested data sets, so people get a little to what kind of data that you have, maybe something they didn't know that they were looking for, or something that is really interesting to them. And then beyond that, this data within the browser is explorable. So we can take a deep dive into the data sets that your organization has, and we can filter out by location, we can filter out by attributes. So if we only want a certain subset of a data set, we can gather that. And then it's collaborative. So I can take this data set, match up with another data set, I can share data sets out, and I can download them in those formats. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Cool. So again, this is our umbrella site where we can access all of the data that is released there. I bike to work in DC, so I'm pretty concerned with road safety and where there are like high levels of danger on the roads and things like that. So if I wanted to raise awareness of this road safety and maybe tell a story about it, I can do a search for transportation safety in Washington, D.C. We have 7 results here, and we can just click through to the first one. And we can see the extent of these on the map. So if we were looking at a more, like a nationwide extent, we can see easily where those data sets are placed on the map and the geography of them. So now we're looking at Vision Zero safety data. And Vision Zero is a nationwide U.S. initiative to get all of the pedestrian and bicycle deaths down to 0 by whatever year the city deems is good for them. But I can see that this data set is pretty authoritative. It's coming right from DCGIS, and I can read a little bit more about it. So this data comes from an application that allows the public to communicate their dangers on the road. So this seems like a pretty good data set to meet my needs. I can see an overview of the data set attributes, and then I can see where it's coming from. So the source links back right to that REST endpoint, and then I can access the metadata that the administrator has applied to it. And then I can take a look at the license. So it comes over to that link that they've set up there. We can dive in a little bit more once we have some context towards the data. So we can shift over to our table tab, and we can zoom in to where the features will appear on the map. Right now we're seeing what we call a geohash, which is just a gridded visualization of location density of the features. We draw this when it's a large data set so that it can be handled by the browser. We can zoom into the White House. So we're exploring the data by location now. And we'll see the points drawn on the map. There's a few things that we can do now here. Right away, we can do some visualization. So we can do something that we call smart mapping. And this was added to ArcGIS Online in the past year. And we've leveraged it in ArcGIS Open Data as well. So doing a simple visualization, we can see the different user types. So red are the perceived dangers from pedestrians, blue bikers, and green car drivers. And we can infer that there is a bike lane on this road because that's where a lot of bike dangers are. Okay, this data set has those 3 user types, but we're really only interested in the bikers to tell our story about bike safety. So we can come in here and filter out by bikers. And we'll see that we're only looking at 253 rows now. So when we go to download this data set, we can download the entire full data set in those formats as spreadsheet, KML, or shapefile, or we can just download the filtered data set. We're just interested in the bikers. We can go here, and then that comes down right there. It goes up into our little activity panel, and we get a direct download of those site data. And now I can load it into ArcMap and do some further analysis if I wish. I can also access it through these APIs. So this is really good for developers or people that want to make some web apps or web maps with GeoJSON or GeoServices. And again, this is linked back to the source of the data. So whenever the source is updated, these links will get updated as well. So this is great for me when I want to go make a web map and I want to be sure that I'm always displaying the most up-to-date data. So I don't have to go back here, grab the most recent data, and then plug it back into my web map. It just syncs automatically, which is awesome. We can also look at some pretty simple charts. So we can do a histogram of the user types as well. So just some more visualizations provides a little bit more insight to the data. And then finally, we can open it in ArcGIS. This will load up this data set into the web map viewer, and then we can go do make some web apps or something like that. And if you have any saved layers on this or how it's being laid out, then that will come through too as well. So we're seeing all of the icons that CC has added. So that's the umbrella site. What governments are doing is not just releasing their open data into this, but they're making their own sites. So we can look at a few examples of these. This is the city of Charlotte, and it goes to show that you can fully customize this however you would like. So what Charlotte has done is they've completely taken away the map, and they have some business and budget data, and non-spatial data gets displayed the exact same way. The map is just gone. But we can still come over here into the table, and then when you download, you only have the options of the spreadsheet or those APIs, but we're not downloading the KML or the shapefile anymore. Another good example that I like a lot is Hennepin County. And they have their data categories listed on this site. So when users come in and they look at their website, they know what kind of data is available in there and where they can start to browse and explore the data a little bit more. What they also have done is added some featured data sets onto the site. So data sets that are their most popular, data sets that are their most frequently asked for, and things like that they can add there. And they've added some interactive maps. So more resources for people to learn more things about their data. And then what's really good here is that they've added this send feedback section. This is really awesome to create that two-way conversation between the data owners and the data users. So users can submit any kind of feedback if there's a problem with the data or anything like that. What is possible in open data is that users or administrators can add data from other people's sites onto their own site. So this is really great when there are multiple cities in a county and they're all contributing data to a county site, or a state site pulling up data from multiple cities. So this is Data Driven Detroit, and they're a nonprofit in Detroit. They have a few hundred data sets on here that you can search through on here, but you can also find them on the state of Michigan site. So Michigan has added not just their own data, but they've added data from Data Driven Detroit, and they're working closely with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to upload data. So it's one place for someone to come and find all of the data from Michigan. Okay. Should we do, oh, you're doing questions?
Yeah, do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, we can split it up and do questions on that part right now before we launch into the next one.
Sure. So Allison asked any thoughts of, oh, that just moved up. Any thoughts of FPR accessible to mean WCAG compliant?
Yes. So one of the designers on our team is working very hard on making it both FIWA compliant and for WCAG. We're not quite there yet, but it's something that we're doing a redesign right now, and when we work through that, that's definitely something that we want to be able to be fully compliant with.
Okay.
Right now, I think we're at like 80% or something.
Okay. Becca's question, can you limit the types of files that can be accessed, keeping shapefiles, KMLS, but not have REST services or CSV files?
You could hide those options with CSS, but it's all automatic, so all the files are going to be able to be downloaded in that, but you could take it off of your interface. So it's kind of not officially limiting them, but your users won't be able to see it, so that's something that you could do.
Toby's question, are there credits consumed based on the amount of storage used in ArcGIS Online?
Yes. So if you do store your data on ArcGIS Online and it's hosted, then you will run into just the regular, your hosting credits. If you're registering your data from your server onto online, because that's how we organize the data, which I'll talk about next, then that does not take any credits.
Okay. Amy's question, is it possible to browse available data by location, for example, city, county, and see a list of what's out there?
If we wanted to just, right now, if we wanted to find like any kind of data in Washington, D.C., then we could do a search like that. What is coming, we're going to redesign how this search page functions, and then on the left-hand side, you'd be able to filter by data owner. So if you could click on Hennepin County and get a list of all of Hennepin County's data.
Okay. Frank's question, we serve map and feature, we serve map services with feature access from ArcGIS server. Would each layer be a service available individually via the open data, or would all of the layers in the map service be treated as a group?
They would all be accessible individually on open data, and we'll talk about registering data and how that shows up next.
Okay. Is it possible to create an umbrella site style interface for your own open data site?
If you wanted to have like this big banner and the newest data and things like that, you could, absolutely. The sites are fully customizable, so if you want to completely go on your own with the HTML and CSS, you could do that, yeah.
And Matt will be the last question, so you can continue on with your presentation. Okay. Do users have a platform to comment on data? Do the administrators have the ability to remove comments once they're addressed?
Yes. So coming back to our Vision Zero data, we can see that there is one comment, and users do have to be logged in to do this. So you can sign up for a free ArcGIS Online account, and then you can go and log in. If I was a Turner, I would have the option to edit or delete my comment, and if I was the owner of this data set, I could delete a Turner's comment.
Great. We'll let Courtney continue presenting, and then I'll take the remaining questions whenever you want to take your next break.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, so I'm going to head back into my PowerPoint. So next I'll talk about data preparation and data organization, and we'll go over some best practices as I do so. Also, these slides are going to be available. I'll post a link to them at the end. And again, sorry, this is getting recorded anyway. So they'll be available as resources to you. So when we're thinking about releasing our data onto open data, there's a few things that we should be keeping in mind. There's a lot of great data that is being used for specific purposes by specific people that know the context of the data and are familiar with it. So data sets that have really complex attribute names or attribute aliases. Good for certain purposes, good for certain people, usually not that great for the public when they don't know what these codes mean or they don't know what these acronyms mean. So the first thing that we want to do is set good attribute aliases. And we also want to set an appropriate hover field. And these are both things that we do down in ArcMap. The hover field is going to show up when users are interacting with the map on open data. So if it's a public school's data, a good hover field would be the name of the public school rather than the default of the object ID. So this is an example of the difference that attribute aliases can make. This is the same data set, but on the left we have unedited attribute aliases, and on the right we have edited attribute aliases. So I have no idea what GSLO means or GSHI means, but I definitely know what lowest grade offered means and highest grade offered. So it just makes your data much more easy to understand and will probably lower the amount of questions that your office is fielding from your data users. And this we do, again, back down in ArcMap in the field section of your layer properties. And we want to hide attributes that don't add much meaning to the data set. So there's data sets that have just empty attribute fields or duplicate fields. For example, this data set has 6 attribute fields for the XY coordinates in 3 different forms, I guess. But this probably isn't very useful or needed for your general user. If someone wanted this in a different coordinate system, they can change it. Like, it's a pretty specialized thing. So when we're making it accessible to the general public, making it streamlined and clean helps it to both be easier to be understood and also makes the data transfers faster when your data sets are smaller. So after we've done a little bit of preparation for our data, this is when we're thinking about when we are going to organize our data. So all the data is organized in ArcGIS Online. Your data can either be hosted on ArcGIS Online or it can be served from your server in your map services. We recommend using hosted data for your really popular data sets because this makes your data faster, downloads will be faster, it will be served faster. It makes it reliable in case a server goes down, ArcGIS Online data that's hosted on there will still be available, and it makes it scalable. So if someone takes your data set and adds it into an app that gets showcased on Washington Post or something like that and gets a lot of views, ArcGIS Online can scale that out. If we're doing on-premises, there's a few things that we can consider when we're configuring our services. So for service parameters, we want the max record count to be less than 5,000. The default is 1,000 or 2,000, so you can keep it at that, which is totally great. But we want it to be less than 5,000. So this doesn't mean that you can't have a data set that has more than 5,000 features. There are data sets on open data that have more than 1 million features. But it just means that only 5,000 features are going to get transferred to the browser at once. So only 5,000 features are going to get drawn on the map at once, which means that your users' browsers aren't going to crash when the map tries to draw 1 million features if 1 million features is your max record count. So we just want to set that to 5,000 or less than 5,000. And then for capabilities, we want to enable these OGC, WMS, WFS, and WCS where they are applicable. And once we enable that on our server, those are going to get revealed in the open data interface so that your users can access it in these different formats. We also want to turn off feature access. You don't have to, but when we turn it off, it just lowers the bloat and it makes things faster for your user. So in here, when we're prepping our services to be published, we check the WCS, WMS, WFS, and we turn off feature access. Again, you don't have to, but it just makes it quicker. And then once we enable those on our service, then we come down here and then there's more options on our APIs for your users to access these OGC APIs. And then we add them to ArcGIS Online. So if you're familiar with ArcGIS Online, we're just leveraging familiar workflows. If you haven't used it before, introducing some pretty simple workflows of adding data and then organizing it into groups. So again, you can upload like local items, or you can register them from the web, or registering them from ArcGIS for server. We only support server 10.0 or above. And we really stress that the latest server is greatest because it offers some more features and allows your users to really get the most out of your data. If you have data from other APIs, like data on Socrata or data on CCAN, we have adapters that will pull that data in and then translate it into feature services. And that engine that we use there is called Coop. It's open source. It's on GitHub if you want to go check out the insides of what's happening there. But that will translate data from whatever API it's in into a feature service. And then we also use that to translate that data out into the CSV, KML, shapefile, and GeoJSON. Open data supports, as we looked at before, spatial data and non-spatial data. It also supports raster data and aerial imagery. So for the list, we have map services, feature services, image services for that imagery, also the non-spatial data as CSVs. And if you want to add PDFs and Word documents, you can as well. So those we would add through uploading them into ArcGIS Online. And then your users can search for them and they'll show up in the search results and they can download them directly from the browser. They will not be able to read the PDF or the Word doc within your open data site. They'll either open the PDF in a new tab or the Word doc will download directly in their browser. So that's a good way to share out meeting minutes or other textual data like that. So we prepped our data and we've added it to ArcGIS Online, and then we're going to turn on open data. And this we needed an administrator to do for your online organization, and it's in the organization settings. You just go in, there's an open data tab, and you click enable open data. This doesn't mean that all the data within your organization is publicly accessible. We still have to go through and create an open data group that will organize your data. So it gives you some pretty good control over what data that you want to be publicly accessible and what data you want to keep private. You can also set user rules. So you can make certain people in your organization have special open data powers that other people do not have. When we're adding our data to ArcGIS Online, we want to create effective metadata. So this is just our basic metadata like titles, descriptions, licenses, tags, and icons. And this is what is going to be pulled through to ArcGIS Open Data. So that description that we saw on the Vision 0 dataset is the description from that ArcGIS Online item. Licensing is really, really important, and it tells people how they can use their data or if there's any limitations to it or anything like that. You can also add structured data or metadata into ArcGIS Online. So if you have your ISO metadata, your FGDC, or anything like that, you can attach that to the online item, and then your users can access that through the open data page as well. This is a great example of a data set that has really good metadata. We have a clean title, a very good description with hyperlinks in there if we want to go access some more information. We can see that there is a license, and we can see some tags. So if we click on those, it'll bring up all of the other data sets that have those tags as well. So after we have turned on open data, added our data sets, created the metadata, we're going to specify open data groups. And this is how we control what data in our organization is being published as open data. You can create, groups are really good for a few reasons. Some organizations have created staging groups, which is good when there's data coming in from a whole bunch of different data owners, different departments within your city. One person can own the staging group and vet and make sure that this data is good for publication, and then you can move it over to your official open data group. Thematic groups are also really good for organizing your data. So you would have a transportation group for all of your transportation data. And this comes in handy when you are adding data to your open data site, because other people can add the data that you've put out there as well. So if I was doing a transportation site from Maryland, I could add in transportation data from Baltimore, transportation data from Montgomery County, things like that. And this information is good when it has good group names, icons, and descriptions so that people can see and know what kind of data is within that group. And the icons and descriptions do surface on open data as well. Once we've set our groups up and we've added the data, or once we've set our groups up, you just set it to public and you designate it as open data. That's the one thing that changes when you click enable open data for your organization. The groups will now be able to be designated as open data. And then we simply share the items to our groups, and then we're able to add them to our site. If we want to do questions on that, we can, or I can just launch right into site config. Heather, what do you think?
There was a few questions. Let me see. Louis asked, what is the best way to handle GIS metadata?
So for that, the best way to do it is to add it to the online item. So I can go through this. So here is my ArcGIS Online organization, and so I have a few data sets in here. Metadata got added to ArcGIS Online in the July release. So from here, we can click metadata, and the metadata editor is going to show up. You can fill out all the fields, or you can click open, and then you can upload your metadata file. You can automate this so that you don't have to click all these buttons and upload it for each individual one, if that suits your needs. But once you do it here, then that metadata will be accessible through this metadata link. And the user clicks here, the XML will open.
Okay. I think when you host data, when you use hosted data instead of on-premise, do you need to manually update this data set, or is the connection to a server automatically updates?
I'm not sure. Whenever I've made a hosted data set, oh, sorry, I'm just reading Scott's comment. If you have a hosted data set, once you upload that service, the hosted data set will update as well. It should, I believe.
Okay. I think that's all the questions for right now.
Okay.
Hey, Heather. Hey, Heather, back on that question that Becca had about when you use a hosted service instead of on-premise, you need to manually update it. Well, I mean, it all depends. If you load the data into a hosted service, then you should use that hosted service as the source and either update it directly through things like Collector or a simple web map, or even in desktop. You can bring in a desktop and do the edits, or you have to republish content from your on-premise infrastructure back up to update that hosted service. It won't keep ArcGIS. There is no way right now to keep ArcGIS for server and ArcGIS Online as a hosted service in sync without some scripting. So you just got to think through those workflows.
Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure, no problem.
All right, let's keep going. So now we're going to look at site configuration. So we've prepped our data, organized it in online, and then what does the site builder look like? Any organization can have as many sites as they like. So you can have one site for an entire agency or multiple sites for individual departments. You can also make sites for specific events. So if you're having a weekend hackathon, you can publish specialty data onto that hackathon site, and then once the hackathon is over, you can take it down. So when we're building a new one, we do the basic configuration. So we're going to set our basic information like our site title, our URL. And for the URL, what we automatically do will be data dot the name of your organization, .opendata.arcgis.com, or you can do a fully custom URL if you wish. So DC site is opendata.dc.gov. We're going to set our map extent, and we're going to select our base map. So the default is the light gray base map, but you can change it to any base map that is available in ArcGIS Online, or if you add your own custom base map to your organization, that can be surfaced through here as well. And then we're going to set our site as public or private. This is good when we're still in the process of designing our sites and we're not ready to make it go public, but it doesn't mean that the data within your site is going to stay private, because as soon as we make it available as open data in ArcGIS Online, it's going to be searchable through ArcGIS Online, and it's going to be searchable through our umbrella site. The next thing we're going to do is manage our capabilities. As an administrator, you have a few decisions to make when you're setting up your site and what features you want to have on your site. So you can cater to your users' needs in your local community as you see fit. So when we're looking at those comments before, you can disable them if you don't want comments on your open data site. You can also disable those mapping visualizations like smart maps as well as heat maps. You can also disable enable local projections. So all the data on open data is automatically downloaded in WGS 84. If you want your users to download the data in your own local projection, whether it's state plane or something else like that, you can enable local projections and they'll download it in the projection that it's uploaded in. The next thing we're going to do is add our data. And here, again, we can see all of our open data groups that we have from our own organization, and we can see all of the open data groups across ArcGIS Online. So we can search through groups from our own or look at the ones from other organizations as well and add those to our site. And then we can view a complete list of all of our data sets. We can review the status by either the dataset view or the item view. So if you have one service with multiple layers within it, that'll be one item, and we can do that on the item view. We can filter out by any errors or by any warnings. So if there's data sets that don't have a license, we display a warning because you really, really should add licenses to your data. Or if there's on this one, we see the urban tree canopy data set doesn't support statistics, so that data set won't have the attribute summaries on the data set page because that level of server doesn't support statistics. So you can get more information on your services if there's any errors or warnings, or if downloads aren't working for a certain one, you'll be able to surface that information in this page. And then we go ahead and we design our layout. And there's a few things that we can do here. We can look at the wizard, or we can go in and look at the code. So for the wizard, we have different widgets that we can use. There's text widgets, image widgets, adding in an RSS feed. So if you have a blog or something like that, you can link that in. And there's also data listings. If you're not interested in the widgets, which is like WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, drag and drop kind of thing, you can have more control over your design with custom HTML and custom CSS. You can fully customize the look and feel of your site. Or you can use a little bit of both. So we can do custom CSS in the header to change the branding colors of your site, change the fonts if you wish, change the sizes of the headers and things like that. And we can still use the widgets in the main body. And this is the most common thing that we've seen people use, that mix of CSS and the wizard. So coming in and designing our layout, a really good thing that we would recommend to do is to create categories for your data. This gives people a little bit of a jumping off point when they're coming in and they're wondering what kind of data is available in your site. If your organization doesn't have a branded icons pack or something like that, Icons 8 is a really good resource to go in and get a huge swath of open source icons. I think it's just icons8.com. You can go there and look through what they have and choose ones that you like. And then we can link these categories on our homepage to search results. And this is why tags are really important when you're uploading your data. So for agriculture, when the user comes to, this is Maryland site, when they come to Maryland site and click on agriculture, it is hyperlinked to a specific URL designated by the agriculture tag. So the user is only going to see the curated list of those agriculture data sets. We can also do it by group ID. So if you just have an agriculture group in ArcGIS Online, you can link in the group ID into the hyperlink and add that there. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. The last thing that I want to talk about in these slides is how to federate your data. So you can establish persistent linkages between your ArcGIS Open Data site and CCAN or data.gov. Or if there's anyone in Canada, we have open.canada.ca, I believe, and that's CCAN as well. So at the end of our Open Data site URL, we append data.json, and that is going to output all of your data in this DCAT format. And that's just the spec that data.gov uses. And we can see here that we have this data set, this toxic release inventory locations. It is going to be published out in the same distributions that we saw on Open Data. So we have the basic data set, the REST API endpoint, the GeoJSON, and as this goes down, it'll have the CSV link, the shapefile link, etc. This is the link that we give to data.gov, and they will add this DCAT spec onto their site so that all of the data sets from our Open Data site will also be available to be found through data.gov. And it's a persistent linkage, so you just have to update your data in one place. So once you update it on your server or on ArcGIS Online, once that gets updated and data.gov does their reharvest, then the updated data sets will be available on data.gov. So you don't need to keep publishing up your most recent data to another place. We just do it in one place. So let's hop back into the browser. So going into our groups, we have, I'll just show you in the, this is a group for bicycle data. And once you come down here, you can change the settings. So we have it as public and we have it as designated as available for use in Open Data sites. And then it's good to go in Open Data. So to get to our managed sites, we come into Open Data, we log in, and we go to Manage Sites. So this organization has a few Open Data sites, and we'll just launch into this first one and walk through the process of what it would be like to set up a new site. So we have our name, Civic Land Transportation, transportation site. We can set our URL, etc. We can also add a Google Analytics tracking ID. So you can set up an account, a Google Analytics account for your Open Data site and add in the ID here. And then all of your metrics and telemetry will get sent over to your Google Analytics account. And we have paths documented in the documentation that will tell you where to look to find metrics on your most popular data sets, your most popular downloads, and things like that. We'll keep our base map as custom as National Geographic, and we'll go over to our capabilities. I'm going to keep all of the standard options as enabled, and down here you can see that I have a few of them disabled and a few of them enabled. Coming into our groups manager, this organization has 4 groups that are designated as open data. So we can add our bike data and our transportation data. Let's also look through the entirety of ArcGIS Open Data groups for more transportation and add these things. So let's add Baltimore and Charlotte. And then coming into our site editor, we have again, our wizard and our code. We can go into our code and add a little bit of CSS. So I added in the color blue for our header to change that. And then down in the wizard, we have these widgets. And these are drag and drops. So you can customize the look of your site, make them bigger, smaller, things like that. And customize the text. For this one, we've added a picture of a bicycle. And the image is linked to a search result. So when we're setting up our site, we can come to our site and search through bicycle and then copy this link and go back to our site setup and paste it in here so that when users click on this bicycle image, they'll get sent to the search results. And then you can add stuff in your footer, etc. So we'll click Save and previewing our site. And then again, when we click on this bicycle, we're getting linked back to this curated list of the results. And again, this can be linked to just the regular keyword, or we can copy in a group ID from ArcGIS Online. I'll go over the federation really quickly, just so we can see it in action. So Charlotte has their data.json. This is their big mess of JSON. But once we come into data.gov, searching for City of Charlotte will return all of the data sets that they have on their open data site. So if you want to learn more, there's some really good resources through the ArcGIS Open Data documentation as well as the ArcGIS Online docs. Last October, we did a live training seminar which gives an overview of the product and how to do it, kind of like what we did today that you can see. We're really active on GeoNet, so if there's anything that you would like to see or any things that you're experiencing, you can reach out to us there, and we're responsive through there. And you can access these slides through this short link over here, bit.ly/localgovod, or you can just email me at cclawsons@esri.com. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have or give you more information or best practices or things like that. So we can hop back over to questions.
Toby asked, does Esri register the data sets to data.gov, or is it our responsibility?
That's your responsibility. We have directions for you to do that, but you really just copy that URL and submit it to data.gov through their form, and they'll do that.
Joshua asked, does Portal have open data, or is it just ArcGIS Online?
It's just ArcGIS Online. We are thinking about Portal, but we don't have a timeline for it at the moment.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. Scott's been also answering some questions as well. One more question. Juliana asked, do you need Portal to leverage open data?
You need an ArcGIS Online subscription to leverage open data. If you have desktop, then you have online as well.
Okay. And Becca's question, are there any credits used in the charts and the tables that show the data statistics?
No. Usage of the open data site has no credit usage whatsoever. So your users can use it and hit their downloads and hit the APIs as many times as they want to, and you'll incur no cost for that.
Okay. I think there's 2 more questions possibly coming in.
Okay.
Courtney, thanks a lot for doing this. It was really good.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Alex asked, can you explain why we would add other organizations' data to our open data site?
Yeah.
I can
like a
take that
business
if you
case.
want. Courtney, you want me to take that one? I got some good examples of that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one example that you showed actually today was a really good one. In Michigan, here where I live, the Data Driven Detroit did a really good job curating data sites for Southeast Michigan and made them available from their site, and the state of Michigan wanted to capitalize on that when they launched their open data site. So they just referenced what was available there through that open data site that Data Driven Detroit had done. Another good example is if you've got maybe large cities who have their own open data site within your county, and you want to provide a single portal to open data at the county level too, you could not only curate and share your data, but all within your. I think those are 2 really good use cases for why you'd want to federate like you showed, for sure. And then you could also see, the other thing, sorry, Heather, one more use case that comes to mind too is that Courtney showed how you could have multiple sites stood up for a given city or county, and in big organizations, maybe like Chicago, where departments have their own open data sites, or maybe you have a separate water utility who has their own open data site, you could then provide that through a city or county site as well too. You could just reference maybe a separate authority that you work with closely. Probably another good example.
Alex had, does including additional data duplicate it on data.gov? Courtney?
Well, the data that you have on your open data site should just be one-to-one with the data that is on data.gov. If someone else has added your data to their site and submitted that to data.gov with their DCAT, then it would show up again, yes.
Okay.
But I haven't seen that happen.
Scott, did you want to wrap up and let everybody know about the solution site release?
Yeah, let me do that. Courtney, if you could maybe just stop sharing for a second. I was just going to finish off with something. Thanks. Well, thanks for sticking around, and thanks again, Courtney, for joining us today. I just wanted to spend 1 minute with you guys showing you the video when Michigan State beat Michigan this weekend in football. No. What I wanted to do is take a minute and show you what's coming this week in our October release. So one thing you'll notice is that on the main landing page now for the solution site, there's a direct link to the what's new. And you'll see that on Thursday night late, so Friday for most folks, there will be a new solution site release. And we've talked a little bit about this in our last meeting, but you can see here all the content that we're shipping. So we've got some new apps coming for elections, a new release of photo survey that enhances some of the tools we've provided already, some new configurations of ArcGIS Online for your planning departments, an enhancement to the road closure solution to really help you guys do exactly what Courtney described earlier in the session, that is share data with Waze and other consumer mapping products. And then you'll also see a whole new series of applications for emergency management situational awareness, and that's about 6 or 7 applications in total. So it's a pretty large release. As we talked about, it's all, probably the key areas we're focused on are elections, planning, and then emergency management. So, grab that content, download it, and give us feedback, and then we're starting to work on the December release next. So thanks, Heather. I just want to take a minute to show that.
No problem. So thanks for joining us for today's meetup. We look forward to seeing and hearing from you at our next meetup, which is on November 19th, where we'll be providing an overview of the new elections, maps, and apps that actually are going to be released tomorrow. So until then, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.